All He Ever Wanted by Kiyomi Appleton Gaines. He had no emotional modulation. He just accepted and believed any thought that came into his mind, and his heart would react as if it were true. The thoughts weren't intentional, weren't chosen, weren't thoughtful, but subconscious little bleeps that popped up and ran along animal neural circuitry, long established, that said, "You are under threat." He was afraid all the time, but men like him weren't given a room to be afraid, so he got angry and tried to control and manipulate every variable to predict outcomes to keep himself safe. Yet, of course, when things didn't go to plan, as they never did, as some unforeseen factor made itself known, or an errant detail came into play, he had no defense. He would rage and resist and try to fight his way free of the circumstance, to force it to change, to yell until somebody did something. "You are going to die." It is what his brain told him, was the constant thought running in the back of his mind. He tried to distract himself from it and violently opposed any disruption of his comfort that would seem, however minutely, likely to align to that thought. It never occurred to him that it was true anyway, that he would die, and that it didn't mean anything had gone wrong or anyone was to blame. He didn't see others carrying the same thought, merely bearing the weight of it, and not actually hearing to hasten his demise as his other thoughts insisted in any way. The problem was his gaze was like sunshine in rainstorm. He broke through the dark clouds that hang over others and lit them up like a technicolor rainbow. He made a person feel real, seen, as if in everything before and everything after, they were just standing still in a stage play, waiting for the spotlight to cue them once again into motion. He made all that was life alive in his aggressive living of it. The gripping, heaving, sucking, escalating of every glimmer from every moment to push back that stranger who lurked over his shoulder. Like adrenaline, his company made all the time without him feeling depleted and exhausted of all the spark. They would fall in love with him, everyone he met, if only for a moment, when a simmer of his hot and steely gaze would fall on them. And he would be happy for a moment when he saw the adoration reflected back from his eyes, like plants turning towards the nurturing sky. But something, always something would happen unexpected, and the thought would occur that they were somehow aligned with his invincible tormentor, and the pain would unend him. Once the thought took hold, it was easy to marshal the evidence he told himself he previously overlooked, and the violence that ensued Cruel words of cold silence tearing away his vital radiance, leaving them again in shadow, unseen, forgotten. He would find himself alone once more with a spectre and a singular terrible certainty in his mind. You are going to die. How did anyone go on this way? With Damocles' damnation hovering over the cervical spine, just waiting for one's thought friend to misstep and press. He was screaming inside constantly. Only once had he ventured and discovered a deep well. He climbed down into it, and at the bottom, encircled by smooth stone dripping with water, crouched on the muddy bottom that would sometimes slowly flood. There he found someone, close in age to himself, unkempt and in ragged clothes. The creature cowered, arms up, protecting its head, but the well was narrow and their legs nearly touched. He spoke to it, tried to ask some questions of how it got there, but it started to scream, long and unending scream with rage and pain and fear. He got himself out, barely his head. As he climbed, he looked back and saw the horrible, broken things reaching its closed hands after the staring up at him with his own face. He never went in again. When at times the screaming became too loud, he would pour drinks down his throat to fill the well until the other self would fall silent. He sometimes had a glimpse then of that piece of himself, submerged with only his nose stretched up above the waterline, and the tears seeping from the corners of his eyes, adding slowly to its chilling volume. At least, he would tell himself, before slipping into the stupor that was not sleep and not so safe from the fiend he fled. At least the fellow was finally quiet. He hated it. He hated that well existed, hated that someone was trapped down there, hated the agony that crippled him when he heard the scream, hated that he could not reach the man, help him out, and neither could he finally once and for all drown him. He hated that it was more some part of himself. No one must know, he decided. The trouble was the creature would step into his body, take him over. Sometimes when the shadow would cast a chill over him because something had fallen out of the plan, and he suddenly felt he had no control, no defense, no protection against the consuming darkness. He would fight, battle against whatever had set the creature free, and also against the thing itself. It hated its prison. It hated him. But he could not let it go free. To wreak destruction in everything in his life, every piece in precarious balance. Sometimes the others would put things back in order. Sometimes he could force things into place. Sometimes he would see the light fade in the 10th ring and become shadow things, lost to him. He saw some still, now and again, whom he'd once loved, moving in a faded and colorless place, separate from him. Those he blamed the creature for taking from him, or whom he blamed for releasing the thing inside of doing what he knew they must to keep it contained, to keep them all safe. When he closed his eyes, all he saw was death's dark cowl, and when he opened them, everything was dimmed by the shadow of the sea.